All right, everybody, you have just tuned in to the Steel City Blitz Steelers Podcast presented by Deck Roofing Incorporated. And it is great to be back with you once again in this very, very odd time that we are living in with pandemic-related things and all that. And we will do our best to avoid that. But to be very honest with you, it's impossible because it is starting to affect a little bit about the operation of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the National Football League. So we will have to talk a little bit about that, but there will be some player and football talk involved in that as well. And I'm sure plenty of laughs along the way. And before we get any further, Ian is back this week after a 1-week hiatus after his daughter was born on July 4th. So Ian, congratulations. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's exciting to be a girl dad now. I guess it's the year of the girl dad, apparently. Like everyone I know is having girls, so it's pretty cool.
Hey, yeah, that's right. It is. We need to get yourself a T-shirt, maybe a new idea for DC4L custom tees. Shameless plug. And girl dad.
That poor girl though. 4 older brothers. Oh,
Four
my
older
God.
brothers. Yeah.
See, I don't see it as poor girl. I think she's going to be just totally fine. I think she's going to be protected. Those boys will do anything.
To say the least.
Yeah.
I think that any boy who tries to date her is in deep doo-doo.
Yeah, you're probably right.
For sure.
That, of course, is the voice of Ben, who's taken a moment away from his protesting in Portland and evading the federal authorities there. Federal authorities. But anyway, Ben, how's it going out there?
It's fine, man. It was a beautiful day. Worked, got a workout in afterward. Now I had a little dinner and I'm drinking a beer and I've got 3 fingers of whiskey sitting here waiting for me. So could be a lot worse. Could be worse.
Right. It could be me. I'm down to 1 finger. So, which is usually the one my wife gives me. Oh, I couldn't resist.
Wow.
Anyway. I know. Anyway, welcome back, everybody, and let's just jump right into this. It looks very much like, I don't know that this is a 100% done deal yet, but it looks very much like the NFL will not have any preseason games this year. And, I know for a lot of fans, it's like, yeah, and big deal. We like preseason games for numerous reasons, but Ian, you've been to preseason games before, and you've seen preseason games on TV. Where do you fall on this idea of not having any?
So preseason games are generally terrible football, but terrible football is better than no football at all.
Right.
That being said, if I had to choose between having the preseason and risking the regular season versus skipping the preseason and being able to have a whole regular season, I would choose a whole regular season any day of the week. We're going to see some really sloppy football the first few weeks of the regular season. But where it's really going to hurt is those bottom of the roster guys that like show out on special teams during the preseason, because that's one of the hardest things to practice in camp or wherever. Like you really need game action for that. And those, we talk about it every year, the last couple of roster spots are always won by guys who contribute on special teams. And, people on Twitter have even taken to tracking special teams tackles during the preseason just so they, kind of have a stock on, which guys have shots at those last few roster spots, because the guys who make tackles are the guys who make plays are the guys who get roster spots. Yeah. And really, look at Johnny Holton last year. He had a great preseason. With kick returns, with coverage. He made a number of coverage tackles in addition to having some big catches on offense. And he really outplayed Deontay Spencer last year during the preseason. And if you would have said, oh, the Steelers should keep Spencer over Holton, like people would have said you were crazy after the preseason, after the way they played. But then
obviously,
the regular season comes around. Well, yeah. But the regular season comes around and Spencer balls out in Denver and Holton is just another
flame
player.
I wouldn't say that Spencer balled out in Denver, but he's a very good. He's a good return man.
Yeah.
He's not much of an offensive threat, but then again, neither is Ryan Switzer, and he's a terrible returner. So,
holy cow, getting ahead of me on the agenda here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ben, you obviously, you watch preseason for the same reasons we do. I mean, you want to see some of these guys. I mean, what's your take on this? And as Ian alluded to, it's probably going to lead to some bad football first couple of weeks.
We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. There aren't going to be any Mike Hiltons or two-star skippers or guys who come out of nowhere and make the roster and impress everyone and become the preseason darling. Last year it was Johnny Holton, and he was a huge disappointment when he actually, hit the field the regular season. Yeah. He's as Ian has coined it, he's a 4A player. And there's not going to be that guy this year. Ola Adeniyi is another one who, surprised everybody in the preseason and made the team. Those guys aren't going to be around. In fact, the rookies this year, because there is no preseason, the rookies that were drafted are going to be at the bottom of the depth chart because they're not going to be known quantities. I mean, guys like Chase Claypool isn't going to get any reps until October. So I know we're all looking forward to seeing what he can do as a pro, but he doesn't know the offense. He doesn't have any familiarity with Ben. Ben doesn't have any familiarity with him. That guy I know he was drafted with a premium choice, but he's not going to see a whole lot of time weeks 1 through 4. He's just not. The same with Anthony McFarland, Highsmith. He's going to be the last outside linebacker to see the field. I guarantee you. And that actually hurts them a lot because they're counting on him developing because, I mean, frankly, you never say never. Yeah. But it doesn't look like they're going to come to an agreement with Bud Dupree, and he will depart next year.
Right.
Mainly because it's not like they don't like him, they don't want him, but they just can't afford to keep him when they're going to have to pay T.J. Watt $25 million.
Yeah.
So, they've got to count on the guys behind Dupree developing, and getting Highsmith on the field is going to be important. But if he can't go out there and compete competently, they're not going to go out. They're not going to risk it.
Yeah. And Ben, I want to go back to something that you said, as everybody that listens knows, we chat all the time in our messaging app, and we were talking roster stuff, and you brought up a good point because I think all three of us have some doubts about a guy like Jalen Samuels, especially when you've got this rookie McFarland that's come in. But your point was, with no preseason games, limited time, don't be so surprised if Samuels is there when the final roster is announced, right?
Yeah, I think that Samuels will be the number 2 running back week 1. I know that people are poo-pooing that because he had a bad year. Whatever. Right. The year before, he had a great season. He overachieved. Yeah. Everyone loved him. Last year, he has a bad season, in part, honestly, to the fact that the offensive line didn't play well, also due to the fact that they saw constant 8 and 9 man fronts because the quarterbacks suck balls and they basically dared them to beat them. Yeah, your quarterback can't do a damn thing. We're going to dare him to beat us, and your running backs aren't going to be able to do anything. And they were right. And Samuel's trying to run in traffic isn't good. Ian, he broke down some stats the other day just between Steel Dad and I on a channel, and the yards before contact for the running backs were a full yard shorter than they were the year before. And that's blocking, man. Yeah. That's blocking and 8 and 9 man fronts. And it's because the passing game was no threat. It was terrible. Yeah. So I see Samuels, especially because he is a competent receiver. I see him as the number 2 running back and also a known quantity, knows the system. Yeah. The number 2 running back week 1. Benny Snell is not dynamic enough. Sorry, Benny Snell lovers. He's not dynamic enough to be the guy. He's the guy you want to bring in when you've got a lead in the fourth quarter and you're looking to bludgeon the defense.
Pound it.
Yeah, he is that guy. And he'll get some yards then, and people will just absolutely love the way he plays, I think. But I expect Samuels to be the number 2 at least for the first month of the season. McFarland, he won't see many reps early on. He'll make the team, but he won't see many reps early on because he's not going to know the system. He's not going to be a known quantity. All these things play into that. All the rooks are going to be at the bottom of the depth chart.
Ian, Ben brought up those stats that you were talking about. I mean, does that almost make Benny Snell look a little better considering how quickly guys were being contacted in the backfield? Because he ended up, I think his average was around 3.8 per carry.
I think it was about 4. Yeah, because actually I have him up right now. He was so I'll just run through him real quick. In 2019, so last season, Steelers running backs averaged 1.4 yards before contact and then 2.2 yards after contact. The year before, in 2018, they averaged 2.3 yards before contact. So like Ben said, nearly a full yard more, right? 2.3 versus 1.4, and then 1.9 after contact. So essentially the same, about 2 yards after contact both years. But the big difference was before contact on the runs. So Connor and Samuels were the only 2 running backs that played in both seasons. So they're the best ones to compare. And actually their numbers almost mirror exactly what the teams did. That after contact, 2018 versus 2019, their numbers were about identical between the 2 years. It didn't make a difference. But before contact, Connor was down 0.7 of a yard and Samuels was down 1.9 yards. In 2018, Samuels' average was 2.6 yards before contact. In 2019, it was 0.7.
Yeah,
so
Samuels, I agree with, and I just want to punctuate the point you just made about Samuels. Samuels is a guy that plays better in a spread offense where he's got room to run. When he's out in space, that's when he can be productive. When he's got room between the gaps, he's got room to maneuver, if you will, in the gaps, he can be effective. But when it's like last year, when he's got no room at all, he's terrible. And I'm sorry. Go on.
Oh, well, and I think the point that we've talked about before too is that Samuels is a much better outside runner than he is an inside runner. If you're gonna run him inside, it's probably between like the guard and the tackle hole, and you want to do it out of shotgun. You're not going to line him up in an I formation and have him run behind the center. That's just not his forte. But to finish Ben's point about, or Mark's point about Benny Snell. Snell actually averaged 2.8 yards after contact, which was higher than the team average, and the only running back to average more than him was Kareth White, who only had a handful of carries. Snell's after contact numbers were excellent. They were essentially the best on the team.
His before contact number though was poor. It was 1.1.
Yeah,
okay. His overall average was 3.9 yards per carry, which is respectable. It's respectable.
Yeah,
but he's not a good outside runner. He's not a guy who's going to make a lot of guys miss. What he does is run people over, and he's not a great receiver. So I just don't see him as a very dynamic kind of a player. He's a guy who plays a role. That's the kind of guy you need on your team, but he's not an every down back.
I think he's exactly what you said. He's a fourth quarter hammer. That's what he's all, or a short yardage type guy in earlier parts of the game.
Yeah.
I want to segue for a minute. I don't know if you guys caught. I one afternoon last week I caught up with Hall of Famer Rick and I asked him. I said, Rick, would you be okay wearing a mask if you had to go to Steelers games? And his answer quite frankly, floored me. He said he would wear a Ray Lewis jersey, I think, and a Tom Brady hat to a Steelers game if it meant he got to go to the Steelers game. Are you guys? Where are you guys on that? Because I have no problem wearing a mask.
I would not wear a Ray Lewis jersey and a Tom Brady hat. Fuck no.
That's what I told Rick. I said, Rick, that's crazy.
I would go to the bar across the street from Heinz Field and watch it on TV before I did that shit.
Well, don't forget though, Rick's got a streak going though. He's like 200 and some games or something.
Yeah, Rick's got a streak going, and Rick's got different priorities than I do, and maybe Rick's less petty than I am, but there's no way in hell I would do that. Sorry.
The league did mandate They did mandate today that all fans will have to wear masks, and of course there was a little blurb about New Jersey saying that nobody's going to be even going to these games. Which, of course, we opened the season in MetLife against the Giants. Ian, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I'd have no problem wearing a mask. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of times you see people, especially in the wintertime, wearing those full face
Sure.
ski masks anyway. So yeah, I'd have no problem wearing a mask to go to a game. If it meant I got to go to a game, it's a small sacrifice to make to be able to see live football.
Yeah.
We talked about
agree.
this. We talked about this with Ellie, 2 weeks ago, and I mean, we were all the same frame of mind. When it was announced that the Steelers were going to require masks, we all agreed, like, with exactly what Ian just said. If it means seeing the game, it's a small sacrifice. It's a small inconvenience.
Agreed. And we know that there are people who are very passionate about the stance with the anthem and who kneels and who doesn't. And I'll be damned if I ever watch a game if they do that. I mean, now it's even kind of morphed into this mask thing. I'll be damned if I ever wear a mask and have to go to a game. It's like, are you serious? That just takes it to a whole nother level, but I'm not going to go into that. Ben, you brought this up earlier when we were talking agenda about, where the NFL and the NFLPA are in terms of the testing and some of these other things that are going to go on. The rookies have reported. They reported yesterday, and the veteran guys come in on the 28th. So what do you have as far as the latest between the two sides here?
Well, obviously no preseason games. The Union's still pushing for a longer ramp-up period in camp and a later start to the season. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if that's going to work. Roster sizes in camp now are going to be 80 instead of 90.
Yep.
One more reason those bottom of the roster guys have got less of a shot.
It's 320 guys. It's unreal.
They still have voluntary opt-out. As long as you declare that you're opting out of the season by August 1st, you can opt out. You don't get paid, obviously, but you can opt out for no penalty and your contract tolls. Let me see. Daily testing for the first 3 weeks after they report. And then depending upon the percentage of positive tests, there will be a new testing schedule implemented based upon that. They're really hoping that they're going to see testing, on the level of between 1% and 3%. If it gets higher than that, then they're going to stay with daily testing for a while. Supposedly the NFL has contracted with a private lab because they don't want to draw from any public resources.
Right.
They don't want to slow down people getting their test results back. I don't know how you avoid that, but the NFL seems to be adamant about, paying whoever they've got to pay to do it outside the scope of the public purview. And if the season is canceled, here's a new one. There's going to be a weekly stipend paid to players. Now, I don't know what that is. They don't have an agreement on this yet.
Correct.
Here is the big one. This is what's holding everything up. Obviously, there's going to be lost revenue this year.
Sure.
Because there are going to be fewer fans in the stands. They're going to be, they've got a lot of other things going on.
Yep.
There are questions about how the quality of the product, as you both have brought up, it's going to be sloppy football early going in the season, and that could impact ratings, everything else. Certainly the negotiating position. The TV contracts are already negotiated, but they've got revenues from NFL Network and other advertisers that are going to be impacted by this. So the union wants them to mitigate the lost revenue over 11 years. Just smooth it all out over 11 years because they're going to lose billions. The NFL wants to take it all at once this year and next. Take all the bad medicine at one time. So they're negotiating on that. And I don't know where they're going to land yet, but that is the big projecting right now. That's where things are sticky.
Okay.
That's why it's about money. It always comes down to money, right?
Of course.
Yeah. That's where the holdup is at this point and getting things finalized.
So Ian, do you anticipate there's going to be some players, maybe not just with the Steelers, but do you anticipate there's going to be some players that are going to opt out of this and say, I just can't risk it?
Maybe here's the hard thing, right? Is that, especially a lot of the bottom of the roster guys are, I don't want to say living paycheck to paycheck, but I mean they're playing for their livelihood, right?
Yeah, in a sense they are. Yeah.
The guys who can probably afford to take the season off, or the veterans who have more long-term contracts, and the risk you always take is that if you take the season off and somebody outplays you, then your roster spot's not guaranteed the following year. Right. Especially if you have a large contract. So the guys who can afford to take off are the guys who also, could potentially be replaced by a younger, cheaper player. The one caveat to that I'll say is sort of the Ryan Clark thing, that, Ryan Clark, when they discovered his, was it sickle cell anemia that he had? Yeah, that he couldn't play in Denver. And really, honestly, I think that, that postseason game we won't talk about would have gone completely differently if Clark had been able to play. So that being said, if there are guys that have definitive health risks, I could see them taking the season off. But I think, these are guys who play a game where they step out on the field and know there is significant risk of long-term bodily injury, and they still
every play. Yep.
Every play. Yeah. We saw what happened with Ryan Shazier. You've seen what happened with Alex Smith. They're literally kind of putting their life on the line. I don't want to make it sound like they're, firefighters or EMTs or police officers or anything like that. They're literally out there, charging into a burning building. But they're playing a much more dangerous game than a Major League Baseball player is, or even a basketball player is. We've seen the long-term risks of concussions, things like that. And these guys are still willing to go out there and play. So I don't think this is, for the majority of players, going to slow a lot of them down.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think in all these situations, there's always a surprise. I think that Ian touched on something that I just want to punctuate again. Is like we were talking about when they were negotiating the CBA earlier this year. 65% of NFL players, 65%. A large majority make less than $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys don't have any understanding of basic finances. I don't know a better way to put it. I'm sorry. There have been too many cautionary tales about NFL players who ended up broke because they pissed their money away, because they spend it like drunken sailors. Personally, I believe the NFL and the NFLPA have an obligation to teach these kids about money, but they don't seem to take that very seriously.
No,
but that's another longer conversation.
Sure.
I think a lot of the guys in the league, aside from the fact that you're a bottom of the roster guy, you got an opportunity to play this year, you may have an expanded role because somebody takes the year off, you definitely want to take advantage of it, you're going to play. A lot of them just can't afford it not to, because what are they going to do? Go bag groceries for the season? Honestly, what are they going to do?
Yeah. No, I get it. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion if and when any player, especially a premium player, makes that decision. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. You're listening to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast, presented by Deck Roofing Incorporated of South Florida, serving Broward County and the southern Palm Beach counties. Whether it's commercial, residential, multifamily, or condos, contact Deck Roofing today by visiting deckroofing.com. Guys, Ryan Switzer is made he's made a few waves this week. And he apparently posted on his Instagram, and I'm just going to read right from it. He said, "I believe I will be one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. I unequivocally believe that given my opportunity, when my opportunity meets the preparation I've put in, I have no doubt I'll be up there and I'll be talked about like Julian Edelman is, Wes Welker, Jamison Crowder, Cole Beasley, a guy I played with in Dallas. I have no doubt that when my opportunity meets preparation, I'll be there."
Why did he talk about a whole bunch of guys we hate?
Well, yeah, that's a whole like other conversation because they are. I mean, they are all guys that play for teams that we don't like. But Ian, do you like his confidence?
I mean, you always want to see your guys be confident, but the production on the field does not match that confidence. And I mean, he's been in the league long enough that, you know, there's years of tape on him. And, you know, players don't suddenly take a giant leap forward. I don't know. I'm very skeptical. He has short area quickness to be able to get open. He doesn't have strength to break tackles and run away from and long speed or even medium speed to run away from guys. And that's really where someone like Edelman, you know, Edelman's a great route running technician, but he also has some ability to make guys miss after the catch and get away from guys and get yards after the catch. Switzer doesn't. Not even as much as Eli Rogers did. I mean, Eli Rogers was dangerous after he caught the ball. Switzer is not at all dangerous with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I agree. Ben, I want to make sure you get your 2 cents in on this because I was stunned by this comment, frankly.
Whatever on the comment. I mean, you know, if he doesn't believe in himself, he shouldn't be in the NFL. Yeah. If he didn't say something like that, I would think that he was miscast. Okay, let's just put it that way. Obviously, he's been in the league a little while. He knows the game. He knows how to read the room. He knows what he's got to say. He said it. But, you know, I'm on record for the past few weeks. I think he sucks. And I think he's a great guy. I just don't think he's a good football player.
Yeah.
I look at what he did last year in particular as a returner. As a returner, which is why he was kept. He was a sure-handed returner, and they needed him, and he's incredibly ineffective as a returner. Johnson was 10 times as good on punts, and Kareth White, a bubble roster guy who barely made it because somebody got injured, was better at kick returns.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason to keep him. I see no reason. He offers nothing as a receiver. Catches a 1-yard slant and goes down the first time a guy gets a hand on him. I mean, literally, a hand will take him down because he doesn't have any strength and he can't make guys miss. And I don't see any value in keeping the guy. I'm not a fan.
Look, as far as this comment, I was fine with it until he started to bring up the other players because now you're putting
because we hate them.
Well, yes, of course, as was mentioned. But there's no reason to compare yourself to those guys. Just if I'm him, I'm thinking I got a lot to prove here. I just need to go out and be the best that I can be, and I'm going to leave it at that. And I know there's a lot of people in social media and Steelers Nation that are worried that because he's got a close relationship with Roethlisberger, that what's going to happen is he's going to make the team ahead of somebody that probably should have made it ahead of him. I'm not going to say that's not going to happen, but he's very, very cheap. He's still on a very team-friendly deal. But I'm with you. I don't see any reason to keep him. Super guy, not so super player. And I want Ryan Switzer to prove me wrong. I hope that he comes out and plays like Edelman. I absolutely hope so. It helps all of us, but I just don't see it. Okay.
Okay, so let's just talk about Ben real quick and how much pull he actually has in the team. If Ben had as much pull as people seem to think he has, they never would have drafted Ryan. They never would have drafted Rudy.
True.
And last year, Eli Rogers would have made the team over Johnny Holton. So shut the fuck up already about Ben picking who he plays with and who he doesn't. All right? I do see some logic in the fact that Ben had a lot of sway in deciding who the offensive coordinator was going to be. But I don't think that they actually said, hey, Ben, who do you think it should be? Let's talk about who you want us to hire as the OC. I think that Tomlin just intuitively knew that there was a good relationship between Fichtner and Ben, and he went, I think this guy can probably run the same offense, and he can run it with the quarterback who knows it really well, and I don't want the quarterback to have to learn a new offense. He's 35 years old. Let's just let Randy be the offensive coordinator, and, when Ben gets to the line, if he doesn't like the call, he can change it.
I agree. And I'm just going to segue right from that because we won't know anyway. We're not really going to know the whole story one way or the other. So it really doesn't matter. But it's definitely
one quick point. Switzer makes $825 this year. He's not cheap anymore.
Is he making that much?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, all right. I'm going to move on. Did you guys happen to get a look at Ben Roethlisberger today, doing some volunteer work there in Pittsburgh?
Looks like a hipster.
My goodness. He is svelte indeed.
I sent a picture of it to my tubby brother-in-law, and he said, what, did he go vegan? I'm like, he may have. I don't know.
I don't know what he went, but he's clearly dropped some weight. And of course, anytime you shave off a beard that looked like Yukon Cornelius, you're going to look skinnier automatically. But he looks pretty damn good. I'm not going to take a guess at what his weight is because he's always carried his weight very well. But he looks good. It's just one more reason, guys. I want this season to get rolling and hopefully as safely as possible, to say the least. But Ben, you mentioned, or excuse me, Ian, you mentioned you guys both talked a little bit about Bud Dupree. He's going to be here for one more year, and then likely is going to move on. Ian, do you see any way possible that he is in Pittsburgh in 2021?
Honestly, no. Because given the contract that Myles Garrett just got, that's pretty much what we're going to have to pay TJ Watt, because TJ Watt is at least as good as, if not better than, Myles Garrett.
And younger.
And yes.
And he's younger and he's on the rise, and it is
not
what it is,
clinically
man.
insane. So yes. So I mean, everyone was freaking out at, whatever it was, 125 million, average of 25 million a year. Like that's what we're gonna have to pay TJ Watt. And maybe we can sort of skirt a year with the 5th-year option on his contract, but I mean, that's what we're gonna have to pay him. And if that's the going rate for, top tier outside linebackers, then I mean, Dupree can probably command somewhere in the range of 15 to 18 million a year on the open market, given the season he just had and his age. He's a young guy too. Don't forget that. So
he is.
I mean, look at what Shaq Barrett just got too. So after, one really good year, which was Barrett's only year as a starter, whereas Dupree's been a starter and now is, on the rise as well. As far as sack totals go, broke that double-digit sack barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm.
There's no way we'd be able to afford spending what would probably essentially work out to, $40 million for 2 outside linebackers. Like, there's just no way.
No. I think it's going to be $40 million plus once Bud actually gets paid. It'll be the $17 million range. And I need to correct myself. Garrett's actually younger than TJ Watt.
Is he really?
Yeah, by about a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's ascending. So, I mean, that kind of is what it is. I'm sure that he has standard contract language in his deal where if he gets suspended again, he voids all of his guarantees, and the Browns don't need to worry about it. I don't know how they structured it out yet. I haven't looked at it, but
right.
Obviously, it's a very generous deal for a premier talent and a 24-year-old player. And, if they wanted to re-sign him, that was what it was going to cost. And he just set the floor for TJ Watt's deal. and Watt's going to cost $25 million and $1 per year.
Yeah.
And if you got to pay Bud 17 on top of that, that's $42 million tied up in two spots on the defense. It's just too much. It's you just can't do it.
And you've got a pending extension for Cam. I know we're still a couple years down the road, but Minkah Fitzpatrick, assuming things can stay consistent, excuse me. It's which also kind of tells you why they're trying to stay young at wide receiver too. So they don't have to keep paying that, but that's a whole other story. What was I had something else I was going to mention here real quick.
Speaking of paying guys, though,
go ahead.
I did write something about this earlier this year, back around draft time, but there is some contextual evidence to support actually paying cornerbacks, that you're actually better off signing veteran cornerbacks than you are trying to draft and develop them, because it's
that's right.
extremely rare that you actually hit on a cornerback that you draft. So you're better off going sort of the route that we've taken, the Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden route, that find a guy and sign him, and that's the one position that you can make a really good argument that it's actually worth paying in free agency, because the proven guys are hard to come by.
Yeah, they are.
The Joe Hayden deal that's one of the best deals that Colbert's ever made. And granted, Hayden wanted to be a Steeler. He had friends on the team.
He did.
I mean, he literally traveled to Carolina, traveled to Charlotte to sign the deal because he didn't want to wait for the Steelers to get back to Pittsburgh that week. So he went to them and said, "Hey, let's negotiate a deal." And they got a very team-friendly deal out of the, basically they signed him for what the Browns were offering him to stay in Cleveland. And he said, "No, up your ass," and left. So, I mean, that's one of the best deals Colbert's ever done. And he's had some bonehead moves. But yes, to echo the point that Ian's making, even Steven Nelson, when they signed Steven Nelson, I said on this show, I think they overpaid, but you have to overpay in free agency when you sign guys before, during the legal tampering period. You always overpay. They didn't overpay. They didn't overpay Steven Nelson at all. They got their money's worth and then some.
Yeah.
Those have been two outstanding deals, and I'd much rather do that than draft and develop a corner. And maybe Justin Lane will work out, but last year, man, I don't know. He looked like he was lost out there. He certainly has a lot of physical ability, though.
It's funny you mentioned him. He's just 21 years old, too.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that it clicks for him.
And didn't he just start playing corner? He didn't come to Michigan State as a corner, didn't he?
No, he was a receiver.
Yeah. Receiver.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was. So there are some arrow up things on him, and it is hopeful. But yeah, I remember your article, Ian, about not drafting him, just going to get him in free agency. That is just about going to do it for us. Unless you do it. What else do we need to talk about?
I don't know.
We don't need to mention any former Steelers receivers on the show.
Why did you bring that up? No. Not doing it.
Actually, I have a much more interesting topic to bring up. And Ben, I think you were the one that pointed this up. It appears that our Ellie, our little Mary Poppins from the British Isles, is a pro wrestling fan.
And right, I forgot.
And we're gonna have to take a little deeper dive into this, because if that's the case, and there's a little bit of evidence to say that this is true, we could have a whole lot of fun with this. If in fact, and we're not bashing pro wrestling by any sense.
I'm absolutely bashing pro wrestling. It's fake as fuck. I said it.
Of course, and nobody disagrees with that. but I just found it funny
that shit's real, and it's not. It's all prearranged. It's entertainment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure, there are injuries.
Yes.
There's a physical aspect to it, but it's acting. It is acting, you idiots.
Well,
anyway,
that doesn't
it's a soap opera in tights.
It very much is,
and spangles and glitter and sequins,
and it doesn't take away from the fact that Miss Ellie apparently loves it. And
I wonder, is it a British thing? Do the Brits?
I don't know, because lots of I don't know if you guys saw the movie Fighting with My Family is about the true story of a young woman who comes from the UK and becomes a big star in the WWE, and it's a great movie.
Missed that one.
Well, I'm just wondering if maybe that's not why Ellie watches it. Maybe she was inspired by a fellow UK woman over there that did that.
I can just see her, doing tea and crumpets and watching pro wrestling. and between bites yelling, "God save the Queen," and then sipping her tea with her pinky out, and then eating another bite of the crumpet.
And didn't she also mention, I think, on Twitter today that she's been working out rigorously? Maybe she's trying to become a pro wrestler.
That could be true.
I think there's something.
I had not thought about that angle, Mark. You could be right. You could be right.
I think.
Wow.
I think, Ian, you might know this. Doesn't WWE have a big training center in Florida?
I have no idea about that. But what I was going to say,
I was trying to test your knowledge.
My knowledge is extended to one of my college roommates was a big wrestling fan, so I watched it for a very short time while I was a roommate with him. But I do know enough to know that the big thing in wrestling is like the heel turn, right? When someone who's been like a good guy all along turns heel. And if Ellie ever turns heel, that would be the most epic day on Twitter, because if she starts riffing on everyone, that might be like the greatest heel turn in history.
It would. We might have to set her up to do that. That'd be kind of funny, actually. And I'm running out of time, but hopefully we'll get her to listen. So.
Have her cut a promo with like a fake mic in front of her, just ripping on all the Browns fans and the Bengals fans and the
wrestling
fans and all that.
That'd be good. All right, we've devolved into absolute zaniness, so we're gonna cut it short right there. But thanks again for listening to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by Deck Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. Make sure you follow the website at steelcityblitz.com. On Twitter at SC Blitz, Facebook.com, Steel City Blitz, and same thing on Instagram and all this other stuff. And big shout out to Ty, who's a fan of the podcast and jumping on with us to start doing some marketing stuff, and excited to see what he can do. So no pressure, Ty, no pressure. And that's it for us. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.